into this full card preview for you guys of UFC 276, Adesanya versus Cannonier. Oh my goodness. I cannot think of a pay-per-view card that has been this stacked. It's going down, of course, at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, this coming Saturday, July 2nd. Let us work our way up the card, starting in the early prelims that are going down on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and UFC Fight Pass. Opening the entire card, we have a women's bantamweight bout, Jessica Rose Clark taking on Julija Stoliarenko. Both ladies coming off of losses. Stoliarenko 0-3 in her first 3 UFC bouts. So, Mark, you have any words you want to say about Clark versus Stoliarenko?
Yeah, I want to say, how did this fight get on this card?
It's the only fight on this card that's not like
you literally
huge, big
walked
profile.
down the card, and it's like, and this fight, and this fight, and this fight, and then Jessica Rose Clark against Stoliarenko. Like, why? I don't understand what happened here. But anyway, Jessica Rose Clark is minus 155. Stoliarenko's plus 125. I really don't love either of them. Stoliarenko's 0-4 in the UFC, but somehow still has a job. Jessie just doesn't amaze me, but she does have some improving grappling, and Stoliarenko continually gets out-grappled. Plus, Jessica Rose Clark is apparently walking out to Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy, which I saw Ariel Helwani post the other day. So mainly for that reason, we are going with her. Jessica Rose Clark dictates the fight, wins a UD.
Omar.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I don't see anything that Julia presents that's going to give Jessica Rose Clark any kind of issues. The irony is as bad as Julia has looked on the ground and getting out grappled, majority of her wins are by submission.
Yeah, I know.
So to me, that means that she's probably just not on the level of the UFC fighters, in general are. So I have no real reason to pick Julia in this fight, and so I'm not. And I will be going Jessica Rose Clark by UD.
All right, boys, going up the card now in the women's flyweight division. Jessica Evil Eye takes on Maycee, the future Barber. This is a nice fight and one of some consequence in the women's flyweight division. Actually, I could say that about pretty much every fight from here on out on this entire card, that all of these fights are pretty consequential.
Yes.
Jessica Eye, though,
Literally.
looking to get back into the win column, having lost 3 in a row to Jennifer Maia, Joanne Calderwood, and Cynthia Calvillo. And Maycee Barber coming off of 2 straight wins against Miranda Maverick and Montana De La Rosa. Mark, what's your assessment of this pretty exciting women's flyweight bout?
Yes, so Maycee is quite a favorite here, more than I expected. She is minus 250. Jessica Eye is plus 200. Eye is tough. She's not an easy out for anyone, but I feel like she's reaching a point where I can't really find confidence in picking her anymore. I think Barber's athleticism probably plays a factor. The concern here is just that she gets picked apart by Eye's boxing because hers maybe isn't quite there yet. But I think she can clinch, push, lean, maybe even get takedowns. Long story short, I think she can just mix it up and out physical Eye to stop her from landing too much with the hands. And I will say Maycee Barber wins a UD.
Omar.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I haven't had confidence in Jessica Eye in a little bit, as much as I do like her. There's just, like we were saying in the previous fight, there are certain levels to this, and I think that they're as scrappy and as dedicated as she is to her craft. I actually think she's getting better. I don't really see like major improvements in her game every time that she fights. Maycee Barber, on the other hand, is young, is still learning the overall game, but she came in with a lot of promise because of the skills that she already presented. If you look at her first fight in the UFC and you look at the last fight that she had against Maverick, was her last fight, right?
Oh, no,
Miranda
Montana
Maverick?
De La Rosa.
Barber's? No, yeah, De La Rosa.
If you look at her last fight, it's very, very different than the way that her first fight went. I'm still not on the Maycee Barber train, but I'm looking to see how much the tickets are, if that makes sense.
I like that.
I'm in the same exact boat.
Yeah, I'm still looking. So I'm going to go with Maycee Barber. I'm going to go with her by decision. But I do think she will be able to handle Jessica Eye.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a long 15-minute spar between these two ladies. I don't see either one of them finishing the other. I like your point, Mark, about the difference in boxing skills, but I think the youth and athleticism clearly is on the side of the 24-year-old Barber. I'm going to go with her by UD.
I did not know you were going to be giving us picks this soon. Let's go.
They're all such good fights.
I'm about it.
They're all such good fights. I have to. Okay, finishing out the early prelims on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and UFC Fight Pass, a middleweight bout between Uriah Hall and Andre Muniz. Oh my goodness!
I didn't even process that this is early prelims. Still.
This could be on the main card, guys.
This could be a fight night. Like if
it
you
literally
really wanted
could. To,
this could be a fight night.
This could be a fight night. Main
event. Yes.
Okay, real quick. Uriah Primetime Hall, the Jamaican 17-10 as a pro. Sean Strickland snapped a 4-fight win streak for Primetime. He's looking to get back in the win column. Andre Muniz, back-to-back wins in the UFC, 4-0 overall in the UFC. He's riding an 8-fight win streak as a professional. He's 22-4. My goodness, with 13 submissions to his name. Omar, let me give you this one first. What is your assessment, and give us a pick for Hall versus Muniz?
I love Uriah Hall. Big Uriah Hall fan. Love the way he fights, especially when he's there. Like when he's there, he's 100%. His mind's in it. Again, another one who his emotions run him, but when he's violent and when he's on, he's very, very dangerous and very difficult to beat. With all that being said, Andre Muniz is a fucking animal. That man is a straight up beast. The things that he has done to the people in the UFC so far, that I don't even know how long has he been in here now. He's been off of the Contender Series. He's technically had 4 fights in the UFC since 2019. And in that time, he's had 3 armbar finishes, one of which is to Jacare. We can argue all day about Jacare going downhill and not being as good as he once was, perhaps towards the end of his career and all that other stuff. That's totally fine. You don't armbar Jacare, and I'm pretty sure. Did he break his arm?
Correct. I was just going to add.
He broke Jacare's arm.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, there are levels to this shit, and if you don't think that is a crazy level, you're not paying attention. So I have to go with what I understand based off of this matchup, and it just seems like Andre Muniz is primed to fuck up Uriah Hall. Pun intended.
Is that a pun?
It was a pun.
Mark, give us your assessment and your pick.
So Muniz is almost 3-1. He's minus 280, which is, again, bigger than I thought it would be. Uriah Hall is plus 220 as the dog. Uriah Hall is easily the best striker Muniz has fought in his UFC run thus far. And I don't think it will matter. He is competent enough on the feet to not get blitzed there. Not like Hall really blitzes anyone these days anyway. And as soon as this thing hits the mat, and it will, it's going to get ugly. Sean Strickland was able to take Uriah down multiple times. I don't think Muniz has much of a problem, and I will go with Andre Muniz round 1 sub, either armbar or rear naked choke. I'll leave it open, but round 1 sub, and moves himself into a big-time middleweight fight.
You took my pick and assessment right out of my mouth, Mark. This is a tough fight for Uriah Hall for a number of reasons. He's giving up pretty much attributes in every category. He's older. At 37, he's shorter. He's 6 feet. Muniz is 6'2". I think their reach. I don't know what their reaches are. They might be similar. But I think this is going to be a tough fight for Uriah Hall. I'm going to take Andre Muniz by submission in round 1. Sure, let's say armbar again, and I think he's just riding a huge wave of confidence. I mean, his record is devastating, and he's undefeated in the UFC still. So I think that he's going to make a big statement Saturday night, and he's going to march on through the middleweight division. And I'm excited for him. As much as I love Uriah Hall, I'm excited for Andre Muniz as well. All right, let's
excited
go
at
on.
I'm excited at the prospect of somebody being this goddamn good in the division.
Yeah.
Like, if we get some more new blood in these divisions, it just makes things just a little bit more exciting. So I'm all about it.
For reference, those are my number 10 and 11 middleweights on the early prelims.
Okay.
Absurd.
True. Okay, sticking in the middleweight division, and now we're getting up into the prelims on ESPN, ABC, and ESPN Plus. We have Brad Tavares taking on Dricus du Plessis. Let's see. Brad Tavares, the Hawaiian, he is 34 years old, 19-6 as a pro, coming off back-to-back wins in the middleweight division. Du Plessis, his nickname is Still Knox, the South African. He is 2-0 in the UFC, and he's riding a 4-fight win streak as a professional. Mark, let me send it over to you first. The Hawaiian taking on the South African. What is your assessment and ultimately your pick?
All right, so this one is almost a pick 'em. Dricus is a slight favorite. He's minus 130. Tavares is plus 105. I don't think Dricus du Plessis is ever winning a UFC title, but I do think he is very legit. And this just comes down to the question of how good is he? Because Brad Tavares is a great middleweight litmus test, and always has been. Brad likes to strike, as we know, and I do think that Dricus can potentially hang with him on the feet. But the X factor here for me is that as good as Brad's takedown D is, I could see Dricus find a way to drag this one to the ground in a big spot or two and maybe swing it there. So I'm tempted to go Brad. I do love Brad, but I don't think current Brad Tavares is necessarily KOing guys. So that makes me think Dricus is going to have 15 minutes to work and try to find something. And like I say, the guy knocks people out too. He's capable on the feet himself, but I think he can just find something. I think he's got more avenues. Mm-hmm. I think he's the fighter on the rise, and I'm going to go with him here. I'm going to say they end up on the mat maybe a time or two, and one of them is late in the third, and Dricus finds a sub in round 3.
Would be Tavares' first submission loss.
Didn't realize that one, but we'll go with it anyway.
Omar, give it to us.
So I just did a quick Google because I was curious about Still Knox and what that means, if it's a South African thing or whatever else. I didn't find anything specific on the word Still Knox, the way it's spelled, and the phrasing in which it's spelled, or how it's spelled, in one word and not still space Knox, right? But there is something that is called, that it's spelled Still Knox sort of like as a brand, and it's a sleeping pill. And it's not very far off from something that would make sense for a nickname. So I wonder if it's somehow a play off of the Still Knox sleeping pill. So just a little fun fact for you. As far as Monsieur du Plessis, I am pretty sure that man goes into my animal book because that dude is wild. Every time that kid is in the octagon, he is doing wild shit to people. I love Brad Tavares. He's been around for quite some time. He's had great performances and things like that. But the reality is du Plessis is on the rise. The man is very, very dangerous. While I can understand why Mark thinks that this fight's going to go to the ground, I think Brad Tavares is going to play too long with him on the feet, and he's going to get caught. And I think du Plessis is going to knock him out round 1.
I really thought you were taking Tavares.
No, not for this one. Not for this one.
I'm intrigued.
If I was ever a fighter, my nickname would be Michael Advil PM Hansen. Kidding. I'm a du Plessis fan, man, and I've never been on the Brad Tavares train. I don't know why. I just never have been. I think both these guys are pretty well rounded, but I just think that there's more talent for du Plessis. Why not? I'll say he finishes him. I'll say he finishes him with a submission. Let's say club and sub. Round 3. Let's go.
I like it.
It's gonna be a scrap though. It's gonna be a scrap for sure.
I don't think that goes. Man. I don't think that goes 3 rounds though, man.
I didn't see that coming.
Okay, in the welterweight division on the prelims of UFC 276, Ian the Future Garry is back in the UFC cage, taking on Gabriel Gifted Green. Ian Garry, one of the more popular fighters coming out of Cage Warriors, is still undefeated as a professional, 9-0, 2-0 in the UFC so far, coming off of a win against Darian Weeks back in April. Gabriel Green is 2-1 in the UFC. Also, he was 1-1 under the Bellator banner. He's coming off of back-to-back wins in April and February of this year, and he's 11-3 overall. Omar, let me kick it over to you this time. Ian Garry back in action, very popular guy out of Ireland. What's your take? You think he's going to get another W and keep rolling?
I think Ian Garry is good. He is definitely very popular. People love to watch him fight. He's got the huge following from Ireland. I haven't necessarily been as sold, I feel like, as other people have been sold on Ian Garry. And it's not to say I don't think Ian Garry is going to win, because I do think he's going to win. But at the same time, I don't think he's as good as I think people make him out to be, or compare him to Conor or other people kind of on the rise when they were. Ian Garry is very good, but he is very beatable. And I think it shows in a lot of his fights that there are avenues that one could take to beat Ian Garry. He's got holes for sure. I think the competition that he's being put up against doesn't exploit those holes, or maybe he doesn't allow people at those levels to exploit those holes. But I think the further up the rankings you're going to get, he's going to run into a wall that might just be too much for him. I don't think that's going to be this fight, though. And I am excited to see Ian Garry fight, just off of the premise that he is an exciting fighter. He's always trying to go for something. He's very active in the cage, very aggressive. I do feel like there is a ceiling for him. I just don't think that that's the ceiling. I don't think this is going to be his ceiling. So I'm going to go with Ian Garry, UD.
Mark, take it away.
So this is easily the tightest odds Ian Garry has had in the UFC as of yet. He is still favored. He's minus 170. Gabe Green is plus 140 on the other end. This is the first time the UFC has put Ian Garry across from someone who can take him out. Gabe Green hits hard, he finds his shots well, and Garry is going to have to be careful in this fight. But with that said, I still think Ian Garry can kind of outwork Gabe Green overall. And I even think that Gabe Green may bring the best out of Ian Garry, in, you know, the best that we've seen from him so far. I think being in a true fight may let Ian Garry shine a bit. I think the 5-inch height advantage is a factor, because Garry can work behind his kicks and dictate range a bit to stay safe from the green hooks. And I will say that maybe there's a hairy moment or two for Garry, but I think he takes a UD, and I think kind of has people saying like, oh shit, Ian Garry, yeah, maybe he is good because he looked good there. I just think it's going to be a fun fight, and that he's going to look good.
Every fight for Ian Garry thus far has been a sort of litmus test of us, like, is he going to get past this guy? Okay, is he going to get past this guy?
It's small. It's very like incremental steps with him.
The other thing to keep in mind specifically about this fight, which is sort of like an offset thing here, but Ian Garry, since his inception into the UFC, has only fought at events with crowds. They've all been pay-per-view cards. I think he's only fought twice, but they've both been cards with people in them. So he's already dealt with the crowd, with the craziness, with all this stuff. Gabe Green has been in the UFC now, I want to say, for
3 fights.
Three fights? 3 fights.
Yep.
2-1.
Not
He's
one
2-1
of
in the
them.
UFC.
Not one of them have been a fight with a real crowd behind it. And so you wonder if Gabe Green's going to get hit with all of that, because 276 is not, I mean, everybody and their mother is going to 276. There will be famous people and all kinds of crazy shit going down at that fight. So it just wonders to me if it's more pressure on Gabe Green in that particular setting.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I'm sure Gabriel Green is feeling some pressure. It's a pretty high-profile fight against a popular guy. That being said, I mean, clearly, of course, this again can be said of every opponent that Ian Garry is facing, but Gabriel Green is, I think, probably the most talented fighter that he's going up against.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Still very young, only 29 years old. He's in his prime. He's fought under Bellator. He's been with the UFC. He has a pretty decent record at 11-3, and his record also bespeaks the skills that he has. He has 6 submission wins to his name. I think this is going to be a really hairy fight for Ian Garry, And just to make it interesting, I'm going to say that Gabriel Green walks away with the UD over Ian Garry.
Breaking hearts.
Let's
Breaking
do it.
hearts in Ireland.
Sorry. And I like Ian Garry. I think he's cool. He's a cool, exciting young guy. Okay. In the welterweight division, Jim Miller steps in to face Donald Cerrone. I don't need to cue this one up. What's that?
Other way around. Cerrone steps in to face.
That's what I meant to say. Cerrone was a late replacement. I'm not going to cue this one up. Anybody who's listening, neither of these guys need any kind of introduction. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What's your take on Miller versus Cowboy?
All right. Cowboy's the dog here. He's plus 175. Jim Miller is minus 220. This is not the same thing as the Cowboy versus Lozon fight. Jim Miller is still active. Jim Miller still looks good. He is not nearly as washed looking as Donald Cerrone has looked as of late. Granted, the first time these guys fought, Donald Cerrone smoked Jim Miller, which is what kills me in having to pick Cowboy fights these days because there's so many images of prime Cowboy that come through my head knowing what he would have done to these guys in his prime, and now it's like, yeah, but we're not in the prime. But you know what? This is at 170, and I think that's going to be my out because I need to pick Cowboy. I just need to. And if it was at 155, I don't think I would have been able to get myself to do it. But at 170, I think there's going to be more of a size advantage for Cowboy. Jim Miller is certainly not a 170-pounder. Cowboy won't be as drained. Maybe that lets Cowboy get out of round one from any early blitz that happens where he's his typical cold self. And from there, I think maybe we could settle into a bit of a war. And I will say Cowboy takes it 29-28 on the cards. But to be clear, this is a bit of a fan pick here. So don't go betting with me.
Omar?
Yeah, this one's going to hurt my soul. So I'm going to go with Jim Miller on this one. I think at this point, Jim Miller is just a little too durable for Donald Cerrone. I think Donald Cerrone has been hit and hurt quite a bit at this point, and has shown vulnerabilities at this point with shots, right? Like there was a certain point where you could hit Donald Cerrone quite a few times and he'd still be coming forward, right? That doesn't happen as much anymore. And Jim Miller is still a difficult guy to actually put out. So I think just based off of durability alone, how similar, not necessarily their styles are, but the way that they fight is, they're both ready to go to the ground at any time. They're both ready to stand and bang at any time. And I think they both kind of line up quite well against each other. So just based off the durability alone as sort of the X factor, I'm going to go with Jim Miller. I will do it by KO round 3.
What a tough fight to pick, really, in
Doesn't
terms
make me
of
happy.
their actual skills and attributes. I'm going to go with Donald Cowboy Cerrone here. Just looking at his record, this is a fan pick as well. It's a fan pick. I'm just like, come on, Cowboy, you got to get a win. You got to go out into the sunset on a victory. Jim Miller is a super active and scrappy fighter, but I think he's not enough of a pressure fighter to really give Cowboy a problem on the feet, which in the past has really been the kind of fighter that Cowboy, runs into issues with, like a Nate Diaz. That's the one that comes to mind. I think Miller's the kind of guy who's scrappy and very bouncy on his feet, but he's going to find himself suddenly in range with Cowboy, and that's where Cowboy goes to work. I'm going to say Cowboy gets it done by, let's say decision. Let's say UD. I think he's going to have Jim Miller in trouble in a few spots in this fight, but to Omar's point, I think Miller's a pretty durable guy. So we'll say he's going to go to the bell. We're going to see Cowboy walk away with the win.
Fights like this make you realize how much you love certain guys because, like, Jim Miller is the man, and I'm over here like, fuck Jim Miller.
Dude, I used to use Donald Cerrone exclusively in one of the video games way back when. So when I tell you that this is a painful pick, trust that this is a very painful pick.
Yeah.
Man.
If it was a lightweight, I would have been with you. I used the 170 as my out. I talked myself into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. interestingly, too, on the Wikipedia page for 276, this fight is not on the fight card. But it is on SureDog.
Yet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's on UFC.com. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It happened. It literally happened, I think, a day or two ago. So it hadn't been too long since it changed.
Okay, let's keep going. It is getting spicy, gentlemen. The featured bout on the prelims for 276. Going down in the lightweight division, Brad Riddell taking on Jalin Turner. This is a great fight. Okay, Brad Riddell is pretty young as a pro. I mean, he's 30 years old, but his record is 10-2. He's coming off of that loss at the hands and feet of Rafael Fiziev by spinning wheel kick that ended in devastating fashion. But before that, he was on a 7-fight win streak. He is now 4-1 in the UFC overall. And now he's meeting Jalin Turner, Jalin the Tarantula Turner, who is bringing in a 4-fight win streak into the octagon. Turner 12-5 overall as a pro, 9 knockouts, 3 submissions, no decisions. So this is going to be a banger. Omar, let me throw it over to you first. What's your assessment of Riddell versus Turner? And give us a pick.
This fight is so hard to pick, man. Brad Riddell is a bad man, and that fight with Fiziev was fantastic. But I really like Jalin Turner. I'm a huge Jalin Turner fan. I have been since he stepped in the octagon. I think he's just gotten a little bit crisper over these last couple of years. He's had a couple of losses on his rise up, but he's been pretty consistent now since 2020. And not only consistent, but devastating as per usual, right? So it just seems like he's tweaking the things that need to be tweaked and keeping the things that have made him successful through his UFC run. And I think that kind of adaptation and evolution in a fighter's game is significant. So I'm going to go with Jalin Turner. I'm going to go with... I respect Brad Riddell. I think this is going to be his first decision win. Jalin Turner by UD.
Wow. Mark, what are the odds?
They're very close. Jalin Turner is the favorite, minus 135. Brad Riddell is plus 110. Until these guys' last fights, I would have confidently taken Brad Riddell. Like, despite the size disadvantage, I thought Jalin Turner didn't quite have that dog in him. And I thought Brad Riddell was too hard to stop. But then we saw Jalin Turner put that dog take to bed against Jamie Malarkey. And we saw Brad Riddell get finished by Rafael Fiziev. And now I'm incredibly torn. Like, I really do not know how to pick this fight. Jalin Turner, of course, is going to have a 7-inch reach advantage and a 7-inch height advantage and 4.5-inch reach advantage, which is hard to ignore. He's often the much bigger man in there. Brad Riddell is the better striker of the two technique-wise. It's possible that he is just able to lean on that to kind of negate that reach and take it out of the equation. And Riddell can wrestle, as can Turner, but then you throw in the sub-threat that Turner is. He kind of can snatch you up and things out of nowhere. The Tarantula, right? I believe is his nickname. Mm-hmm, it's apropos. Mm-hmm. It feels like he maybe has more ways to potentially win the fight. I really don't know. I'm so torn. I don't have an angle on this one of why I think one guy is going to win. I just have to make a pick without really having a feel. I will say that Brad Riddell is tough enough and crafty enough to eke out a 29-28 decision, but it is possible that Jalin Turner has arrived more than I realize in terms of his craft, and that I'm going to be one fight late on realizing that. But I will say Riddell decision.
Oh, I think that the attributes of Turner are going to be too much, as well as the firepower of Turner. And I think he's going to put Brad Riddell away. I'm going to go second round TKO for Jalin Turner.
Wow, nice.
I mean, he's a giant. At 155 pounds, he's a giant. He's 6'3".
Yep, he is. He's a big man.
And Brad Riddell's
To
only
be fair,
5'8".
Brad Riddell, though, trains with very tall men.
He does. Trains with Hooker every day.
Israel Adesanya, so it's
true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not a look he wouldn't be used to. It's very possible. That's a close fight, man. Regardless of who you take, this is a close-ass fight.
Now I have an angle. That's why I'm taking Brad Riddell, of course.
Because he trains with Izzy. All right. In the bantamweight division. Oh, we're now going up into, the main card. Right?
Yeah.
Are we? Into the main card of UFC 276. Starting things off in the bantamweight division with Pedro Munhoz taking on Sean O'Malley. Huge test for Sean. We have Pedro Munhoz, though, coming off of back-to-back losses against Jose Aldo and Dominic Cruz. Pedro Munhoz is 19-7 with 1 no contest, with 5 knockouts and 8 submissions on his record. He has never been knocked out. He has never been submitted. All 7 losses are by decision. Sean O'Malley, the Montanan, 15-1 as a pro, although he would tell you that he's 16-0. He is coming off of 3 consecutive victories in the UFC over Thomas Almeida, Chris Moutinho, and Raulian Paiva. So without a doubt, this is the biggest fight of his career and the toughest opponent. Omar, let me send it over to you first. Sean O'Malley, 15 wins, 11 knockouts. Omar, what is your assessment of this test for Sean O'Malley?
It's exactly what it is. Sean O'Malley has solidified himself at this point as being a guy that is flashy, accurate, and effective inside of the octagon. But he's been doing it against people. Frankly, when you kind of see some of the fights, they just don't look like they should be there with him, right? As tough as Chris Moutinho is, that fight was a ridiculous mismatch. I understand the circumstances and all that other stuff, but at the end of the day, that was a stupid mismatch. I think the one name on his record at this point that holds a little bit of weight within the current realm that we live in is Thomas Almeida. If this was 8 years ago, I would have said that the Eddie Wineland win was also, a solid win. But it's, that one I don't think holds as much weight now. With all that being said, Sean O'Malley styles on people, and that's kind of his thing. My question is, will Pedro Munhoz allow that to happen? Pedro Munhoz is a very competent fighter, a very tight fighter. He doesn't allow a lot of bullshit to go on in that octagon. He has had a couple of losses, but if you look at the people that he's lost to, he's losing to the best of the best, right? The Aljamains, the Frankies, the Aldos, guys who are true and tested, guys who have had accolades attached to their names, guys who are essentially living legends at this point. This is a huge test for Sean O'Malley, and I decided to board the Sean O'Malley train quite some time ago, so that is what it is. This is very possibly going to be the one that, derails the train for a little bit, but I will be riding this Sean O'Malley train, and I do think that it is possible to put away Pedro Munhoz. Based on recent performances, I'm going to go with UD. I think his volume will show more than his power will show, but I will be taking Sean O'Malley by unanimous decision, and I think he does style on Munhoz a little bit.
Pedro Munhoz's last 5 losses going back to 2018. Dominic Cruz, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Aljamain Sterling, and John Dodson all lost to them by decision. So he's never been finished.
4 of them are champs. Former champs.
Exactly. So, Mark, the floor is yours. What is your assessment of this test for Sean O'Malley?
So we got O'Malley in there as an almost 3-1 favorite, minus 290. Munhoz is plus 230. Maybe a little bit of a hype job, but obviously we expected O'Malley to be favored there. But yeah, it's make or break time for the man who became a star before he even sniffed a ranking. There's a lot of pressure on O'Malley here. Like, this is it now. He's on a pay-per-view card. He's fighting Pedro Munhoz. A lot of pressure on him to prove that he is what he says he is. And thankfully for him, he's going to have a 5-inch height and 7-inch reach advantage. And what that means is that Pedro Munhoz is going to have to eat shots, because Pedro Munhoz is not terribly hard to hit. He's very good, but he's never been terribly hard to hit. Sorry, I can't shake this cough. Sorry, I've been coughing all episode to the people listening to this. But yeah, so he will be eating shots from Sean O'Malley. But we know also that Sean O'Malley doesn't exactly have the strongest legs in the game. We've seen it a couple times now. And Pedro Munhoz is going to be ripping the ever-loving shit out of Sean O'Malley's legs, particularly his calves. And that's a red flag. There are avenues for Pedro Munhoz to win this fight, and let's hope Sean O'Malley's legs can stand up to whatever is getting thrown at them. Assuming they do, I didn't love the way Pedro Munhoz looked against Dominic Cruz. He seemed like he was a little bit on cruise control to me. It was the first time I really got that vibe. I'm sure maybe it was the movement of Cruz that was giving him trouble, but I think O'Malley has his own tricky movement and really tricky feints himself that could kind of put Munhoz back in that mode of like not throwing things because he's trying to figure out what's happening in front of him, which is what Cruz did to him. And I think that 7-inch reach is going to be a factor, even to maybe catch Munhoz on the chin while Munhoz is throwing those calf kicks because it's such a reach advantage. I don't think I'm going to be throwing O'Malley in any parlays or anything just because I truly am concerned about the calf kicks. But I am definitely picking him, and I'm going to say he really gets a big breakthrough moment here and knocks out Pedro Munhoz in round 2.
Oh.
Dude, if he first of all,
If he does that,
first of all,
it's all aboard. It's all aboard.
Yeah.
first of all, how dare you? Second of all, Pedro Munhoz has never been knocked out. He's never been finished.
I know.
How dare you? How dare you?
This is a tough fight to pick, man. This is a tough fight to pick. There is that durability of Munhoz. And Mark, you're right. Munhoz has great low kicks.
Oh, some of the best.
But O'Malley has always impressed me with his speed and his hand speed. I want to say that that's going to be the difference in this fight. I'm really tempted to pick Munhoz in the upset, but I'll stay with O'Malley for now. I'll say O'Malley by decision.
You're gonna stay with him for now. You might change it by the end of the episode.
I don't know. I'll stay with him. We'll see at the weigh-ins. I don't know. No, I'll go with O'Malley by decision. It's probably a terrible pick. I was really tempted to take Munhoz with the upset.
That's my pick.
That's what we'll do.
I was curious if any of us would, but nobody did.
I'm very interested to see how effective O'Malley is going to be with his spinning back kick, because one of the nicest tools that kid has is that spinning back kick right to the liver. That will mess, and it doesn't matter who you are. If you get hit with that cleanly, you're going down. So it'll be interesting to see how effective he is with that kick.
Yeah, man. Okay, marching up this card through the main card of UFC 276 in the welterweight division. Robbie Lawler takes on Bryan Blue Collar Barberena.
Is that his nickname?
No.
I got it.
Coming
Sorry.
off that his win against Matt Brown.
Sorry. Is he a farmer? Do you know?
He will be stepping off the farm and going onto a plane to go to Las Vegas to fight ruthless Robbie Lawler in what was supposed to be on the undercard, but got moved up to the main card here. Robbie Lawler coming off of that revenge victory against Nick Diaz back in September of last year. And Bryan Barberena coming in this Saturday with back-to-back victories over Darian Weeks and Matt the Immortal Brown. Omar, let me throw it over to you first this time. What is your assessment of Bryan Barberena taking on the legend, Robbie Lawler? And give us a pick.
This seems like a fight that's tailor-made for Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler loves a man who is going in there to scrap, who is going in there to throw down, to move forward, to slug it out with him. He doesn't necessarily care for the guys who try to avoid doing that, whether that means takedowns or tons of lateral movement with no actual activity. Barberena is going to give him exactly the fight that he wants, for better or worse. I do think Lawler is still very durable, which is crazy to say after all this time. I think he's still very, very powerful when it comes to his shots. He is definitely somebody who can put somebody out at a moment's notice. Barberena, while I like him, I still think Robbie Lawler is better than him overall, and I will be picking Robbie Lawler. By third round TKO. I think there'll just be too much volume. I think it'll overwhelm Barberena in the end, and I think the referee will have to come in and stop it.
Has Barberena been finished by strikes? Now you got me thinking about that.
Twice.
Yes. Oh yeah, Luke, obviously. Oh yeah, Randy Brown. I forgot about Randy Brown. Yep. All right then. All right. Robbie Lawler, slight favorite, minus 125. Bryan Barberena is even money, plus 100. There's no technique breakdown here. If you think that I would consider for a single second picking Bryan Barberena to beat Robbie fucking Lawler, then you are sorely mistaken. I don't care what logic supports it. Prime Robbie Lawler would have broken Bryan Barberena. And maybe this Robbie Lawler doesn't break him, but I am damn sure picking him to at least win a decision. To be honest, I still think Robbie Lawler looks okay. He stalked the hell out of Nick Diaz, old school Robbie style. He still hasn't lost to anyone who's not a top 10 level fighter, and Barberena certainly is not that. So this would easily be the worst loss of Lawler's run here if he is truly falling off in that manner. Maybe he's not the same knockout threat that he was, especially not against Barberena's head maybe, but I will roll with him to win a decision. 29-28, Robbie Lawler. And if you are not picking Robbie Lawler, then you hate fun.
The only thing that gives me pause is the fact that Robbie Lawler is 40 years old.
Yep.
And Bryan Barberena is 33. And he's also a tank. That being said, I had to think that skill for skill, Robbie Lawler is still better than Bryan Barberena. Do I think he's going to knock him out or TKO him? I do not. Because of the aforementioned tank quality of Bryan Barberena. We saw in the Matt Brown fight that, Matt Brown was piecing Bryan Barberena up, and Bryan Barberena eats it. Maybe it's all that farm work that he does, man.
I don't know.
That being said,
Matt Brown hitting you though, and Robbie Lawler throwing a hook at your face. That's the difference between a black eye and a broken orbital, my man.
This is 40-year-old Robbie Lawler, which I think is going to affect something.
Robbie Lawler will probably still kill you at 65. You kidding me? You seen that?
Yeah,
man?
90. If
he would certainly kill us at 65, but he's fighting Bryan Barberena. So
listen,
if Robbie Lawler is 90, if he's 90 and he touches me, I die. Okay, let's be clear here.
Yeah.
I think Barberena makes this another kind of an awkward, weird fight, awkward to score, and I think that Robbie is going to walk away the winner by a split decision. Okay. Cool. Let's go on to a fight that I am so excited about. In the middleweight division, Sean Strickland takes on Alex Pereira. Strickland, no stranger to controversy. The always colorful Sean Tarzan Strickland, maybe the most odd nickname in MMA, in my opinion. He is riding a 6-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night's pay-per-view, most recently defeating Jack Hermanson. Alex Pereira, riding a 5-fight win streak coming into Saturday night, is 2-0 in the UFC, coming off of a UD over Bruno Silva, and before that a spectacular flying knee knockout over Andreas Michailidis. And guys, this is a very, very interesting fight. Pereira is 5-1 as a pro in MMA. Of course, before MMA, he was in kickboxing. Sean Strickland is 25-3 overall as a professional, 10 knockouts, 4 subs. He's never been submitted himself. He's only been knocked down once. Very interesting fight. Strickland as a middleweight is very durable, very tough guy, very tricky style on the feet. But Pereira is he has a world-class pedigree in kickboxing. So, Mark, let me throw it over you first this time. What is your assessment of Strickland welcoming Pereira to the upper echelon of middleweight?
So, yeah, I love this fight. great fight. As we said, on some episodes back, I did not expect Pereira to be in a fight this big this soon, but here we are. And it seems like the winner is probably going to get a title shot unless something odd happens in a different fight somewhere. The odds are wild because Strickland is not even favored here. Pereira is the favorite at -120, and Strickland is +100. So this man is getting a lot of respect. Obviously, newsflash for anyone who doesn't know, he knocked out Israel Adesanya in kickboxing. So, I'm breaking that news for the first time. But, a lot of respect coming Pereira's way. I believe he goes by Pereira. But in terms of the fight, I don't know. I don't know. I already had one of these with Riddell and Turner. I'm about to have another one on the next fight we're getting to. I don't know. There's such good fights on this freaking card. Pereira is going to have 3 inches in height and 4 inches in reach, which is obviously a factor for a dude who's a striker. But Sean Strickland can grapple. As much as he's known as a striker, Sean Strickland is fully capable of bringing this thing to the mat and negating that reach advantage and the kickboxing skills of Pereira. I'm also curious to see what Pereira's cardio looks like if this thing goes late, especially with the pace that Sean Strickland keeps. Yep. There's a lot of variables in this fight, but to break it down as simply as I can, I kind of feel like this is going to depend on how Sean Strickland chooses to fight. If he is going to stand there and exchange, I think Pereira will eventually get the better of him. He's too skilled there. He throws with such accuracy, and there's so much power even in like his small little shots. He just carries such natural power. It's wild. But if Strickland is going to wrestle first, strike second, I think he's going to tap Alex Pereira. Pereira is not exactly a blitz you and kill you kind of guy. So I think Sean is going to get to settle in, and I'm going to guess that he chooses to fight smart and ensure a title shot for himself and not fight in a way that he shouldn't be fighting. I'm going to say that he wrestles and that he ends this thing pretty quickly. I will say round 2, rear naked choke, Sean Strickland. And I know he doesn't have a submission win since 2014. And maybe I'm underrating the grappling of Alex Pereira, who regularly trains with Glover Teixeira, though maybe not lately because Glover probably can't move so well right now. And I know how bad the UFC's hoping Pereira wins this fight so they can set up him and Izzy, but I don't think I'm seeing it. Sean Strickland, round 2, rear naked choke.
Wow, what a pick. Omar, take it away.
I don't hate that pick. The reality is we don't really know what Alex Pereira's game is on the ground. He hasn't really been tested there since he came into the UFC. His first loss in MMA was a rear naked choke. So it's not like it's crazy to say that he's susceptible to being on the ground. With that being said, Sean Strickland is an absolute madman. I don't know how much logic goes into the decisions he makes inside of the cage. He genuinely seems like a guy who likes to get into firefights. It seems like he likes to be the guy on the firing end, kind of making people miss and being able to talk a lot of shit and this, that, and the other. There's a part of me that thinks that from an ego perspective, he would want to show up Alex Pereira and beat him at his own game, or at least try his best to do so. Very possible the moment he gets rocked, that plan goes out the window, and to your point, Mark, he probably goes for a takedown and tries to change up the game a little bit once he realizes he may not be able to stand with Pereira. But I may not have the same confidence in his fight IQ to that extent the way that Mark does. And it's not to say Strickland isn't a great fighter, but I do think that there is a little bit of alpha shit to him. And I don't know if it's going to allow him to possibly do what he needs to do to win the fight and take advantage and exploit the areas that Pereira has. And I think he definitely will strike with him longer than he should. I think he will open himself to a lot of damage where he probably doesn't need to. Whether that goes on for the entire fight or not, I guess that's really going to be the big question. But I think Pereira starts off hot early. I'm going to go with Pereira by decision. I think he can get 2 rounds out of there.
Whew, that is a factor. I didn't even think of that it is a 3-round fight.
Yeah.
Man, there's a lot of angles to this fight. It's a super interesting fight to think about and to try to make a pick for. One thing that strikes me is the really a drastic difference in experience in MMA. I mean, Pereira obviously is very experienced as a kickboxer, but he's only logged 6 fights in a cage, whereas Sean Strickland is going into his 29th MMA fight as a pro this weekend. I think that I don't see Strickland grappling. I think Strickland is a crazy man, and he's going to be Sean Strickland cranked up to level 11 against a guy who's as talented and dangerous as Pereira. And I think Strickland's going to have to be. I think he's going to be screaming at him. He's going to be yelling at him in the ring, talking shit, walking him down with his hands kind of up and down, kind of doing that sort of almost like a modified Philly shell that he kind of does. Oh.
Yeah.
I think the experience is going to be the factor here, and I think Sean Strickland's going to walk away with a 3-round unanimous decision. He might find moments where if he gets stung, he might shoot for a double leg and get the fight to the ground and end a round with the final 2 minutes of a round, ground and pounding Alex Pereira. So I think Sean Strickland's going to walk away with the UD. That's the pick.
I think if there's one area to be concerned about for Pereira, it's going to be the pace, like Mark said. Like there's a real possibility that, the only way you're going to stop Sean Strickland from coming forward is by hitting him. But I don't know how long Pereira is going to be able to do that consistently on the back foot, because that's primarily where I feel like that fight's going to end up being in the beginning of that first round. It's going to be a lot of counter ability or a lot of moments for counters for Pereira. I would assume, based on his experience, a lot of teeps, a lot of things to try to keep and manage distance. But at some point, like we all know, Sean Strickland is not going to stop coming forward. So can Pereira keep that up for 3 rounds and continue to hit him to stop him from coming forward? Or at some point, can his body not keep up and eventually gets swallowed up by the second and third round? The whole premise, I think, is super interesting. It's a very, very good matchup. I have confidence in Pereira, but the reality is this fight is just too fucking crazy to really know what's going to happen.
I mean, Sean Strickland's kind of a crazy man.
It wouldn't even shock me if Pereira's the one that's walking forward, to be honest.
Yeah.
Granted, maybe not because he may be afraid of stepping into a takedown, but we'll see. It's a great fight.
All right, gentlemen.
Great fight.
We have made it to the co-main event of the evening, a featherweight title fight, a trilogy fight between Alexander the Great Volkanovski and Max Blessed Holloway. These guys, kind of like earlier in the card with the Cerrone fight, neither one of these guys need any introduction. Volkanovski, 24-1 as a pro, from Australia, trains out of City Kickboxing, of course. Most recently defended his title against Chan Sung Jung, the Korean Zombie. Before that, he had that classic with Brian Ortega. Before that, he had back-to-back classics, really both of them. This whole trilogy has been a classic with Max Holloway because it's so high level. And before that, he's fought and finished a number of legends. Max Holloway has an argument for the greatest featherweight of all time so far. Volkanovski's creeping up on him. They're both creeping up on Jose Aldo. Max Holloway, after losing those fights back-to-back to Volkanovski, he went on and won fights back-to-back against Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez. He beat the brakes off of Yair Rodriguez. And Calvin Kattar set records for most strikes landed, most significant strikes landed. It was a sight to see, man. So the past 2 fights between Kattar and Rodriguez, Yair, Max Holloway is just, he's unconscious right now. So going into the trilogy fight makes it very, very interesting because both of those 2 fights were very close. Some people thought that Max should be the crown champ once again. So, Omar, let me send it over to you first this time. Give us your assessment and ultimately your pick for the trilogy fight between Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway.
This is a very stressful fight.
It's very stressful.
It's a very stressful fight. The only guys that Max Holloway has lost to at this point is Volkanovski twice and Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. And there's Dennis Bermudez. But the last Dustin Poirier fight over this recent run, right, the run that really matters, the Dustin Poirier fight, I think, is the one fight where he really looked out of place, and I think the weight difference really made a significant change in how that fight may have gone at 145. The Volkanovski fights, though, are so razor close that when you look at the other fights that Holloway has had, he's so dominant with everybody else. And it's just so razor close with Volkanovski that it's difficult to not realize how high level this fight is and how rare it is for us to have two guys at the very top of the division who are almost equally as good as one another is, right? Mm-hmm. The other two I can think of off the top of my head right now would be Usman and Colby. Very, very top of the pack. Probably only going to lose and lose to each other in that sense if they ever did get a 1-1 series going on or whatever the case is. But right now Volkanovski's got 2 over on Max, and it's very difficult to think that Max will be able to walk away with a victory, considering how much better Volkanovski looks now compared to the first Max Holloway fight. There have been gains there. I have no idea how, considering how good he already was, but he is better. I am convinced that the Volkanovski of today, would beat the living shit out of the Volkanovski of 2019. I love Max Holloway. I am down to be proven wrong. I am down for a war. I would be happy with a draw that is warranted. I'm okay with a lot of things. In my heart, I feel like Volkanovski is going to walk away with another unanimous decision, so I will go with that.
Okay. Mark, take it away.
I don't know. Mike, you're up. Man. Volk is minus 200. Max is plus 160. Yet another one that is wider than I expected. I thought this was going to be nearly pick'em. I'm so glad that this is happening. It needed to happen. There was a time where it fell off, and then we thought maybe it wouldn't happen. Thank God we're here. I have said on this show numerous times that although I scored the first 2 fights for Volkanovski, I would be picking Max Holloway if they fought a third time. And I might want to backpedal on that. That last fight from Alexander Volkanovski was scary to me. I get it. It was Korean Zombie. Max probably trounces him as well. I get it that Max just had a similarly scary performance recently against Calvin Kattar. But as Omar said, Alexander Volkanovski has gotten so incredibly good that I don't know how a 145-pound human beats him. He has surpassed any skill level that I ever thought he would reach. But you know who else I can't picture losing a fight to a 145-pound man is Max friggin' Holloway. I mean, I love Max. The maximum amount that you can love someone is how much I love Max. The guy is mind-blowingly incredible. He has also, as Mike touched on, gotten way, way better. He keeps getting better. Both of these guys are infinitely better versions of themselves from fight 1, from fight 2 to now. I have thought Max was on a higher level than Volk until now, which I know sounds weird considering Volk is 2-0 against him, but that's how I have felt. And now I feel like Volk has hit his level and maybe even passed it. I don't think there's ever been a fight on this podcast that I've been more torn on and that I've more just wanted to sit back and watch. But I got to make a pick. It's in the job description. And I'm going to pick Alexander Volkanovski to win yet another decision. Max ain't getting finished. I'll say that confidently. But I think Volk leaves UFC 276 as the greatest featherweight of all time. Whew. Max ate a bunch of kicks from my year. I think Volk could expose that. His kicks look great lately. Volk's jab has gotten so damn good. I think Volk is nearly unscrambleable. I can't see Max getting the better of him that way. I could even see Volk shoot at times to keep Max off balance or make sure he takes rounds. And mainly, for whatever reason, through 2 fights, it seems like Max just has a harder time hitting Volk than he does anyone else. I don't know if it's something about the way they match up, about the size, if it's Volk's movement, but Max just doesn't seem to land the same as he does on everyone else. And I think he needs to hurt Volk to win. And, of course, he's Max Holloway. He can hurt anybody, but I don't think Volk is getting hurt by anyone right now. And I'm going to say he makes it 3-0.
So I think that Max Holloway has found another level, and he is so ridiculously talented. Let me first say, clearly, these are the two best featherweights on the planet.
Yeah. It feels weird that they don't both have belts. Yeah. That's how good they are.
Can we just make another belt that says, like, you're also amazing, Max Holloway?
Yes.
As skilled and talented as Max Holloway is, which was clearly on display in his last two fights, in which he beat the shit out of his two opponents, Alexander Volkanovski fights perfectly. He does not make any mistakes. He fights so efficiently, so energetically, and by that I mean he's so dialed in. Can I pick a draw? But I don't know if it's going to end in a draw. I will also go Volkanovski by decision and be sad about it because I'm rooting for Max Holloway.
It's the intensity, man. Volk's intensity is on another level. It just looks like when everybody is on sixth gear, the man still has a turbo button somewhere in his arsenal. It's like at the end of Fast and Furious when fucking Vin Diesel goes like this driving that damn car. Yeah, he just hits the nos and he's off. Like that just seems to be Volkanovski when he fights, man. It's like it's not that he doesn't even slow down; he gets faster, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, and in most cases, in every other weight class, in most cases, the advantage goes to the guy who's bigger and taller. But Volkanovski, I almost feel like he has an advantage being so stout and compact. I feel like he's hard to hurt. He's quick.
He has a long reach, too. Like, his reach is longer than Holloway's reach.
He also has an advantage.
I think he has 2-inch reach advantage.
He's also been a bigger guy. He's not necessarily a small guy. He is, for lack of a better word, compact now. He lost everything that didn't need to be there. He done tightened up. And now he's a 200-pound man stuck in a 145-pound man body. It's crazy.
He also has an unreal in-fight IQ.
100%.
Obviously, all these elite guys have it. Of course, Max has it. But Volk seems to just have it in a way where in split seconds he can be like, okay, this thing I did didn't work. This thing he did is working. Here's how I'm going to change it. And then now that's not going to happen again. And it's just like he just solves issues so fast.
Yeah, and we talk about it a lot with other people. We talk about the adjustments that you have to make when you're a champion. We talk about a lot of those moments, and I think Volkanovski is probably one of the best at it. His choices in the octagon seem borderline perfect. He's had some fallacies here and there, right? The getting caught in the guillotine against Bryan Ortega, probably in the best position to be in. But the fact that he was able to work his way out of it and adjust afterwards to not only come back and win the next round, but essentially win the next couple rounds and essentially win the fight. Like Volkanovski is prime champion, and it's fantastic to see.
Yeah. Anything else about this co-main?
I just want to know what happens if Max wins. Like, are we doing a fourth one? And then if Max wins again, are we doing a fifth one? Like, what's the end game here?
This might be one of the few times where they've done a trilogy after somebody's already won 2 out of the 3, essentially.
Yep.
Okay.
It's like having a best of.
It's weird.
It's like having a best of 5 and you've already won 4 fights. It's just like
Colby, you have hope.
It's true.
Well,
all right,
to
boys.
be fair, people love Volkanovski and Holloway, so
yeah.
Might be a little different.
Let's do this thing. Main event time. UFC 276 middleweight title fight. Israel, the last style bender. Adesanya takes on Jared. Is his nickname the Killer Gorilla? Yes, it is.
The Killer
Gorilla Cannonier. Adesanya 21-1 as a pro. That only loss as a pro is when he went up and challenged Jan Blachowicz for the UFC light heavyweight title back in March of last year. It was unsuccessful, but he is still undefeated at 185 pounds. 22 victories, 15 of them knockouts or TKOs. He himself has never been knocked out in MMA, has never been submitted in MMA. Jared Cannonier. Enter Jared Cannonier. Has fought at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and now middleweight. One of the scariest looking physiques on the roster. He is 15-5 as a pro with 10 knockouts, 2 subs. He is coming off back-to-back wins over Kelvin Gastelum and most recently knocking out viciously with elbows Derek Brunson. Omar, I'm going to start with you this time. Adesanya, no man has beaten him who weighs 185 pounds. How much of a chance are you giving Jared Cannonier on Saturday night?
It's definitely got a chance. I look at the fight with Robert Whittaker to get an idea of what we probably have to look forward to. And I say that because the way we've just been talking about Colby and Usman, and we've been talking about Volkanovski and Holloway, is very similar to how I feel about Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, I think, is probably arguably the second best middleweight right now. And that's because he's already lost 2 to Izzy pretty handily. When I look at that fight with Cannonier, there are a lot of avenues that would work in Adesanya's favor. Cannonier is hittable. He's just very durable. So I don't think he's going to go away by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think he's going to give Adesanya the canvas to really paint a flashy picture. I think there will be a lot of moments of danger in that fight that Cannonier presents to Adesanya because the man can crack, and I don't even want to know what any one of those strikes feels like. His leg kicks look like they hurt. His punches look like they hurt. His grappling looks like it hurts. Jared Cannonier looks like he sucks. Like, as far as that part concerns, like, everything just looks terrible from a feeling perspective when it comes to him. So I don't think Israel wants to get caught up in any of that nonsense, but I think he's skilled enough. His IQ is high enough. His range, I think, is going to be good enough to keep Jared off of him and do enough to win that fight and do it, again, in a stylistic way. I'm going to go with Israel by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if somehow he catches him and wins by KO.
Okay.
Izzy is a large favorite. He is minus 420. Jared Cannonier is plus 330. So we've reached the main event. It feels a little anticlimactic because I think people are a lot more excited about the co-main. I think people are a lot more torn on the co-main. In terms of this one, I don't think many people are picking Jared Cannonier. He is absolutely deserving of this shot, to be clear. But I've just never been a Jared Cannonier guy, as you guys know. I'm also not thrilled with some of Izzy's recent performances, which I've said plenty of times on here. The second Vettori fight, the Jan fight, the second Whittaker fight, where he's kind of decided to do this spar in a fight thing.
The
and
Romero
I will say,
fight. The Romero fight.
Oh, yeah, that too. Well, that was maybe Yoel's fault, but either way, I guess, yeah, both their faults.
Yeah.
And I will say right now that if Izzy sits back and plays the spar game against Cannonier, he could absolutely lose this fight. It is far from impossible. But the way these two match up, I think we are going to be treated to vintage Izzy in this one. I think he's going to shine. I think he's going to put Cannonier away because Jared is going to try to walk him down. He's going to try to get inside and hurt him with something big. And against Izzy, that style is more or less asking to be countered. Ask Robert Whittaker from the first fight when he fought that way. I think Izzy lands something massive and puts him down. Izzy's got a 4-inch height and a 2.5-inch reach advantage. He is the more technical striker for sure, and I think he walks Cannonier into traps. I will say that he'll land a couple counters that hurt Cannonier at different times. Cannonier manages to shake him off. He keeps going. You start to think, oh, maybe it's going to be competitive. And then one more counter, man down, turn off the lights, everyone go home. Israel Adesanya, round 3, knockout.
I like that take, and I have a very similar one. I agree that stylistically, Stylebender is just going to, I think he's going to embarrass Cannonier. And I think he's going to style on him.
It's a big word.
I think just like against Robert Whittaker. I see Adesanya downloading in round 1, and then round 2, he's going to finish him with some kind of combination or counter strike, and we're going to see him put Jared Cannonier away. And still, that's it. That's all the picks. We did it.